When did the class clown go too far? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. One of my classmates had 2 prosthetic legs. He had a wheelchair for between buildings, crutches for top floor, and climbed the stairs by holding onto the railing. One day when I was carrying his crutches, some guy who always tried and often failed to be funny kicked his legs from under him. Nobody laughed. My classmate ripped one of his crutches by the bottom tip from my hand and smacked it against the other guy's head, making him go face first against a wall. People laughed. That was definitely a teaching moment for him. Story 2. I remember a math class I used to have where this one guy would always say, 69 was the answer to any question the teacher asked. Fed up after the 100th time hearing this, the teacher asked the guy to come to the front of the class. Our teacher then proceeded to grill him about the meaning of 69. The kid wouldn't give straight answers and kept being vague, but the teacher persisted. He then said, "Mason, what does 69 really mean? I want a detailed and specific description of what you mean by 69. By the end of it all, the kid was bawling and our class was losing it. I cannot remember laughing as hard as I did that day. The teacher thanked him and had him sit down. After that, he never sarcastically said 69 as an answer again. Story 3. Was in speech class with a class clown. He'd matured a little over the past year and was interested in actually giving a real speech in front of the class, the assignment. He had props prepared and everything. Placed his slides on the overhead projector and began. I think he wanted to start strong, so he used a nearby yardstick. It also ripped a huge hole in the screen, and then that triggered the release mechanism which caused it to roll up violently toward the ceiling. The fast roll up caused it to fly off the hooks holding it, jump off the wall, then crash into the projector, breaking it. All happened in seconds while he's just left holding the stick in shock and the class dying of laughter. Story 4. We had a kid in grade 10 who was quite big for his age. Our gym teacher was a guy in his late 50 feet or early 60 feet and was definitely not a big guy. Probably 5 feet 10 inches and no more than 170 pounds. Well, this kid had been hassling this teacher all year saying that he could take him. No one took him seriously, but I guess one day when we were doing sex, Ed, my teacher, had enough. He told the kid that if he wanted to go, then now was his chance. After a few more chirps, the kid got up and walked confidently to the teacher, who proceeded to wrap his arms around this kid and belly-to-belly suplex the kid through a table. The class erupted in laughter, and as far as I know, the teacher didn't get in trouble for it. I don't know how he explained the destroyed table though. Story 5. This one time in middle school, I was walking down the hall talking to a female friend on our way to gym class. Abruptly during our talk, she turned and went into a door. Not thinking and completely zoned out, I just followed along. I made it about 10 steps into the room when another girl yelled, "What are you doing?" Suddenly I focused on what I was doing, and I realized I walked into the girls' locker room by accident. I sprinted out of there so fast to the boys' locker room. I was literally shaking all class, and the girls in our class kept giggling. In my next class, typing, another friend asked me about it, confirming that word had spread. I spent the rest of the day terrified that I was going to be expelled. Got home and cried to my mom that I was going to get in trouble for not paying attention and that we'd have to move. Luckily, nothing ended up coming from it, but I sure was focused while walking to class from then on. Story 6. He decided that it would be too boring to just throw pencils at the teacher. Instead, when the teacher was having a substitute who wasn't paying attention, he got his twin sister, who was equally as bad, to gather up all the pads that were in her book bag. Then he wrote the worst misogynistic comments on each pad, and when the teacher finally came back, each pad was thrown at her. I remember this teacher crying right there, and we didn't see this boy and his sister for several school days. Story 7. One day a substitute teacher came. She was preparing for her uni exam and decided to try teaching here and write down the experience in her finals. She wanted to be a teacher. Well, my classmates gave her fake names when she started the roll call. They deceived her by telling her wrong page numbers and just absolutely derailed her class. Everything was revealed in the last. Our original teacher stormed inside a few minutes later and told my classmates what's up. The teacher decided to switch careers after the incident. She became convinced that being a teacher was one of the most hellish jobs out there. Story 8. Teacher here. Not a class clown, but our school had a problem with periodic bomb threat notes being left in the restroom over the course of a couple of years. The school would be evacuated, and one time a bomb squad was called in from 200 miles away. it was a big deal. There was this kid who was super lazy and maybe he wanted to fit in, but he got caught leaving a bomb threat note. He was charged with a federal felony, I believe. He didn't show up at school the next year. I don't know if he was expelled or what. He should have known the school was really intent on catching a perpetrator and that consequences would be severe. Story 9. In drafting class, the teacher took the day off. He was awful as usual and didn't do anything but sit there and tell us to shut up. Some kids kept mouthing off at him. Finally, he had enough. He walked out and went to the principal's office to get some backup. While he was gone, one kid pulled out a condom and slipped it over that arm over the door that automatically closes it. The principal walks in and the condom landed right on his head. It was unbelievable how perfectly it worked. From what I remember, he didn't even do anything about it. The entire room erupted in laughter, and he just told us to behave and left. To a bunch of teenage virgins, that was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. Story 10. Class had been messing with a fairly new teacher for a while and took the light bulb out of her projector and hid it in a ceiling panel. She immediately knew it was the students and went to get the assistant principal. While she was gone, they put the bulb back and the assistant principal thought she was just confused or mistaken because it worked just fine. He wanted to have a chat with her in the hall. While out there, they took the bulb back out and hid it again. When she came back and the projector wouldn't work again, she completely snapped, ended up quitting. Story 11. One time in 8th grade, our teacher forgot to pick up her printed copies of an assignment from the teacher's lounge area. So she left the room to get them and told us to continue our 20-minute reading time. So they, football jocks, wannabe class clowns that could get away from anything, unscrewed the bolts on our teacher's computer desk chair before she came back. Mind you, she's in her 60 feet in this time. She came back and gave us each our assignments. Then she went to her chair and she fell back. Almost everyone were laughing at her, but a few of us went to check on her and made sure she was okay. Once someone helped lift her up, she was livid and yelled at the class, to the point where she was starting to cry, and left the room to compose herself. The same people laughing at her then turned and called out the jocks after she ran out and told them that was too far. Yet, they also all agreed to keep quiet and going, "This is going to be funny," when the jocks were unbolting her seat. She may have been a strict teacher, but she was literally doing what was best for our education. Story 12. When I went to college, there was this one kid in music class who didn't get the memo that being the class clown wasn't quite as appreciated at this age. We were actually focused on our major, wanted our grade, and then get out. He just would not stop the cute comments all freaking year, even though he got about 0 response all freaking year. Every time he raised his hand, or didn't raise his hand, it was something snarky, or wannabe stand-up comedian, or making fun of the professor, or just rude. And then he'd wait for laughs that would never come. Well, on the last day of class, he goes up to the front to place his final test on the professor's desk and kind of looks around at his audience for a second before slapping his test on the desk with a big smile and saying, snarkily, "It was a pleasure, sir." The professor, without even looking up from the test he's grading, says, "Pleasure was all yours." The kid was really taken aback and kind of hung out for a while, unsure of what to do. Class is dead silent. Eventually, he kind of wanders off out the door. As soon as he's out, the class erupts into applause, and the professor goes, "Hey, no talking." Then looks around at all of us and gives the slightest of smirks, then immediately back to grading tests. Story 13. Everyone thought this dude was so funny, but I could go back in time, I'd take him outside, for a little chat. Yeah, chat. I was the show we were doing involved a scene where one of the lead guys drinks out of a decanter. So we used a decanter filled with apple juice as a prop during dress rehearsal. While we were using full props and costume and everything, the guy decided it would be funny to put rubbing alcohol in the apple juice. And the guy drank it, because he didn't know beforehand what had happened. He had to be taken to the hospital. The guy, as far as I knew, didn't really see any consequences. This was a boarding school, and we had privileges on a level system. And pretty much everyone knew who couldn't make it past level 1, early bedtime, supervised study hall, restrictions during free time, etc. He had all of his privileges intact. But the worst part to me is how unaffected he was by his actions. Personally, when I f*** up, I am anxious and I am not quiet about it. I might even be annoying people in the way I do this, but I genuinely don't want anyone to believe I'm someone who just doesn't care. But this guy just gallivanted around like he hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't understand that. He put someone in the hospital and just didn't seem to give a rat's ass. Story 14. This one's kind of clever and different. I had a physiology BO teacher who always had a coffee cup on this desk. Most teachers did. Our class clown dropped a ton of liquid laxative into that cup when our teacher wasn't looking one, and by mid-class that man was sprinting out of the room to presumably all over the teacher's lounge. Bathroom. Like most here, clown's mistake was immediately laughing and blabbing about it. See, we really liked this teacher a lot. He was a smartass, witty, and had a great manner of making fun of you to encourage you by leaning into the camaraderie and respect he'd built with you. It worked. Pretty much all of us told him exactly what happened. My experience was that he laughed, goes, "That's pretty classic," and that was that. No repercussions. No detention. Nothing for clown. This happened in October. Fast forward to December. It's the week before Christmas, and we're having a holiday party in this class. Clown brought brownies his dad made, and everyone basically brought something. Tons of food. Teacher asks if he can run down to the cafeteria and grab us some plates, forks, whatever. He runs out to do that after giving some sass. The moment he leaves, teacher shuts the door and goes, "I need you all to listen to me right now. Do not touch those brownies. Don't. If you do, don't actually eat them. Don't ask." You know where this is going, but wait, there's more. Clown comes back and we all start digging on. Clown is chomping down on his dad's brownies. A few of us took some because we figured it was revenge and were playing the part. Story 15. I am happy to have stayed away from all the insane psychopaths in this thread, lol. We just had the one guy in our math class who was determined to get a rise out of our awesome and super chill math teacher, who had the unfortunate name of Michael Hunt. There was a lot of expertly parried sass. And once, Clown's friend was taking so much shit, the teacher asked him to stand up and teach the class. Which he did, and actually pretty well. Teacher let him go on for a while, then eventually just thanked him and took over again. So since the teacher was also head of the math department, he had his own dedicated classroom, which was filled with all kinds of shit. He had some standees from the movie theater, specifically Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, and every single one of those battery-operated singing, dancing hamsters. This was early 000 seconds. Also a mini fridge and a bunch of other stuff. Class clown led the relocation of a standee to the men's restroom when the teacher stepped out once. Unfortunately for them, the teacher had actually just gone to said restroom, so they were caught immediately. Unflappable, he just took the standee back and told them to sit down. Clown also decided one day that he would see how many hamsters he could set off. They each had a button and did a couple verses of a song before the teacher stopped him. He got all of them. Teacher was mildly amused. The final straw was when Clown stole a pop out of the mini fridge and opened it. Teacher sternly ordered him into the hall, and they were out there for a good 10 minutes. Came back in, and teacher went on like nothing happened. Kid wouldn't explain, but said, "I'm satisfied," and was better behaved afterwards. I spent way too long typing this out, lol. Tell DR, my life is not exciting, and I talk a lot, sorry. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.